Stars Reach is going political with the GravBot update. I'm Controlled Chaos. We're going to cover this update along with a few other things. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the GravBot update literally puts in the ability for players to create towns and to create a government on a planet. And I think this is really, really cool. It brings back the heydays of creating towns in like Star Wars galaxies and stuff like that. So what they explain is there's a GravBot console or kiosk, as they call them, on each planet. And when you interact with them, you can become a citizen on that planet. However, if you change your mind, you want to be a citizen on another planet, you have to go back to the original planet you were a citizen of and disclaim being a citizen, and then go to the planet you want to be a citizen of and apply for citizenship. I think this is a really cool way of doing things and makes things interesting, because these GravBot kiosks also give missions, and this is how you level up the sort of governing and town capabilities of the planets. And this is really cool because the first mission, when you do it and complete it, it will give you a mission kiosk to put on the planet, just like the ones that are on the space station, meaning you don't have to go to a space station if a planet is being governed and has completed the first level. And that's really, really cool idea. I like this. But on top of that, as the GovBot gets more levels in it and gets better, it unlocks a lot more things, such as tool shops, public crafting stations, planetary banks, universities, which is the skill kiosk, planetary ecology console, a real life facilities, and the title shop, which I really like. And this is just the beginning of it. They have future plans for it to have power facilities, theaters, spaceports, ground or vehicle garages, and teleportation hubs. With that being said, I think that's a really interesting idea of teleport hubs, because what they want to try to do is create these really big maps, and getting around those really big maps, having those teleport hubs would really help out, along with, ground vehicles and stuff like that. I think would be interesting. Even the spaceports, because then you could take your spaceship later on and you can fly to the different spaceports that are on the planet, and I like that idea. But the missions also give you rewards, and you get a new currency called citizenship points, which they abbreviate to CP, and you can use those citizenship points to purchase learning engrams, which these will give you a boost in XP for 15 minutes. So you basically do that, and then you go out and do whatever you're going to do, whether it's mining, crafting, or combat, and it will boost the amount of XP you get for that 15-minute time. You can also get skill chits, which these allow you to zero out the cost of a skill to unlock it at like literally no cost, which I think is amazing, because there are some skills out there that are like 800 experience, 1200 experience and stuff like that, that I would use the skill chits to unlock those skills and use my skill points to unlock the lower cost skills that are only like 300 or 400 skill points. And that's really nice that they do this. Now, the way a mayor is selected the first time is it goes off of the person who got the most citizenship points when getting that first level. They become mayor, and they're the mayor for a while, and that's sort of really nice and interesting, and they get some special powers and abilities that we'll talk about in a moment. But they may not be the mayor forever. You can vote later on a new mayor. And this is really interesting because this happens every 2 weeks in real world weeks. A new election will occur. And it's a simple majority vote. So whoever gets the most votes becomes mayor. And when the mayor is elected, all player votes are automatic. So if you're a citizen of a planet and you decide not to vote, your vote goes immediately to the current mayor. Now, you can change your voting by going to the GravBot and choosing the voting option and changing your vote from the current mayor to another citizen instead. And in the next election that occurs, it will vote for that person that you chose. You can opt out of the voting system though. And you can do this by a toggle on your next to your name to opt out of future elections. But if you don't vote, you can't complain about who runs the government on that planet. So you gotta be careful. And this is gonna be really interesting with having the voting and the mayoral stuff. It's gonna get very political. I can see people running campaigns and stuff like that, and it's gonna be very interesting. I can just imagine what it's gonna be like in the future. But let's talk about the mayoral abilities. They get zoning lots, and they can purchase these zoning lots, and they can determine in those zoning areas what can be done in that area, such as mining, lumbering, chronophasing, paving, which is making roads, buildings, burning, and farming, which is all really interesting and a cool way of doing things. And I like the fact of this. They don't say what the maximum number of zoning lots are allowed in total for, max level or any of the levels, or how many you get each level and things like that. So that's something I'm gonna have to ask Light when I interview them a week from the date that I'm recording this video, which is on Thursday. So the day before this video releases. But I think that's really sort of an interesting idea, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions that we don't know about the GovBot system based off of these patches and stuff like that. Now, you can do some upgradings and stuff like that. The mayor can purchase kiosks to place into the world, and it gets added to their inventory. Same with those zoning lots. They get added into their inventory, and they can actually be tradable. They can trade them to other players that, let's say they want someone to go and build out a shopping center area. They can hand them some zoning lots and say, hey, over here, use these zoning lots to create a shopping mall area, and here's some kiosks to put down for people to have shops and things like that. And that's really nice. But they can also give global permissions, so they can make things really secure with the ability to personally approve citizenship applications. So you could end up going to a planet and applying for citizenship, and instead of it automatically approving you, you have to wait for the mayor to approve it. And then they can also allow voting. If a mayor gets over 80%, and this is from Light they stated this in the live stream, talking about the GovBot update, that if a mayor gets over 80% of the votes, they have the ability to just totally stop all votes and become like a dictator and control of that area. So that's going to be sort of interesting in seeing what happens there. They can also do setting permissions for specific citizens, so that they can set like one citizen to, okay, you're able to mine, another citizen to, okay, you're the main person that can do the lumbering and clearing, another person for the farming and things like that. They can also add titles to citizens and like create a council group of people to sort of help come up with laws and manage things and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool that they can do that. They can do building permissions, allowing and disallowing of buildings. They can do mining position or permissions, allowing and disallowing of mining, and the ability to spend GovBot funds on lots or kiosks. And I think it's cool that they can hand those permissions off to other people, because then they're not having to manage the whole entire thing on themselves, and they get to spend a little bit more time enjoying playing the game and not just full time on Mare if they don't want to be. And that's a smart move. You know, just like any guild, you don't want the responsibilities all on one player. You want to sort of spread it out and have a group that sort of manages everything. And the fact that they're doing it this way and actually creates sort of a lot of political capabilities, and who knows what they'll do with this voting later on. And they could make it so that the mayor can set up a voting system where you vote in who the treasurer is, who the zoning authority is, and a commissioner is, and all these different things I think would be very interesting for the future. But there's other improvements that they're doing besides that. They are temporarily disabling the wild wormholes for a while. And the reason they're disabling the wild wormholes right now is they've added in a fourth planet. So we have the 3 planets we're used to, but now there's a 4th planet. And the way this is going to work for this 4th planet is every so often it's going to look at those planets and see what planet's not that popular, what planet doesn't have that much buildings on it, and cities being built on it, or citizenships and being really destroyed. And the one that's being destroyed the most, or doesn't have many citizens, or doesn't have that big of a town, or isn't being built on most, will go away and disappear, and we'll lose the wormhole to it, and a new wormhole to a new planet will open up. And this is for them to test the tech for getting rid of planets that aren't being utilized and bring up new planets that have a possibility of being utilized and built upon and flourish and stuff like that, that they stated in the original design of the game that that's how they wanted to run. So they're now testing out that tech. I think this is a good time to do it with having the governing stuff going on. It's smart planning for them. Another thing that they've done is they have the great flora conversion because of the new textures and graphical capabilities for the flora and optimization that they've done. They've wiped out all of the flora on all of the planets and replaced it all with new flora. So we got that wipe that happened. Then there are a few furniture pieces that they've added, a couple of stools, 2 end tables, a table, a barrel, and a canister. And this is the very first step to the whole entire furnishing system. And they have more planned later on. They also added in some curved wall pieces to the game, both large and small. We're talking walls with windows, without windows, ceilings, and floors, which is really cool. And they're calling it the curved set. And you can access this through the architect skill tree. The crafting stations and ecology kiosks are no longer near the planetary portals. They just don't exist on the planets. You get those through a governing system and the mayor getting access to those kiosks to be able to put down. So that causes a reason for a planet to have a governance over it. Is those planets will then have access to it, and those planets that don't have governance over it, or low level governance over it, won't have all those kiosks. So it will be more like you're out in the Wild West or out in the middle of nowhere with no real access to that kind of stuff, which is really interesting and a unique way of doing it, and I actually really like it. Then they have the craft, or the chef and medics have been added to the titles in the title shop. And then they enabled a temporal anti-aliasing to create clear rendering, so graphical rendering capability improvement. Nice add there. They added a placeholder map page. It doesn't function yet, but people keep on asking for it, and they're slowly working on implementing that. And there's information that I'm going to explain later of when we can hopefully see that. The /camp has been removed from the game. If your character gets stuck in the world somehow, use /stuck command and will move your character above the world and sort of in a more safer area. The refinery is now part of Camp 3 skill node upgrade in the Scout or Ranger skill trees. And I think that's a really nice add-on, considering that they got rid of all of the tool stations on the planets. Having a camp that you can put up that will have all of them will be really, really nice. They also fixed an error with the terraformer that made it extract mode underpowered, so it's now a bit more powerful. The bank now hold 100 items instead of 60 items. Great improvement there. Homestead crates now hold 25 items instead of 10 items. Really good improvement there. The terraformer and the chronophasers were improved in efficiency, buffing them somewhat regardless of their PQRV stats. All stats are left equally. And then mining tailings in space will now evaporate over time. So those big long trails of tailings that we'd see coming off the big asteroids in space won't be there. And I'm sort of 50-50 on this. I'm more in favor of this because people were making walkways going from one big asteroid to another, but I think players can make walkways using the blocks and stuff like that to be able to do things in that direction. But there's even more than that. They released a video talking about new types of makers and servitors. And I have a link to that video down below. Check that out. It's really cool. They show off a lot of cool new NPCs that we'll be able to interact with and how it will work. And then they also released a roadmap. And this roadmap looks really cool. And it literally shows the history of updates that have happened in the past, what's in the current test, what's currently being worked on, and what's in their next priorities, and then long-term roadmap. And I think this is really cool because you can literally click on each of these to see what's going on. So for instance, we have basic character customization right here for a kiosk. I can click on this and literally brings up information talking about how these kiosks will work. I think that is a really cool idea. Then if we go over, and you can see so much cool stuff going on here. Like we have the basic NPCs, new space zones, and stuff like that going on. Surveying maps. In fact, the surveying maps, when we were talking about the maps, in this surveying map one, they literally talk about why this is taking so long. And it's because what's going on is the terrain constantly being manipulated and altered by players makes it really hard to keep a constant map going, and they need to figure out a way to work it out for cartographers in gameplay and stuff like that, because they want cartography to be a skill set. And so that's going to be sort of an interesting balance effect, and they're trying to figure out how they want to balance that all out. But if you really want to deep dive into the roadmap like I did, I spent over an hour looking over the roadmap. The link to it will be down in the description below also. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, hit that thumbs up button, and YouTube will think you like this video next. Have a nice day.